A shower or two today, a top of 25. Tomorrow, showers, 23. Saturday, showers and 25. Partly cloudy on Sunday, 29. And then cloudy with a top of 32 on Monday. More news as it happens on 5AA.
Peter Godfrey, talking Adelaide on 1395 5AA.
Just on 6 minutes past 5 now. Strange temperatures come up a little way. 18.3 we got down to. We're now up at 19.1. So one of those funny old nights. Let's head to New Zealand now, see what funny old things are happening across the ditch. Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz. How are you, Selwyn?
Yeah, very good, Peter.
Your side of the ditch good this morning?
A little bit cloudy and overcast in Auckland, but it's certainly warm. The humidity is extremely high over here at the moment.
Oh, okay.
And we've had a good week since I spoke to you, Peter. Last of nice blue sky days and temperatures up around between 28 and 30 degrees in Auckland City itself. And so it's been really hitting summertime temperatures for New Zealand at the moment.
Nice. Yeah, we've sort of been around, similar kind of thing, although we've dropped down a little bit at the moment with sort of mid to low 20s for a few days here. So
that sounds a bit of a reprieve, doesn't it?
Yeah, beats the 40s we had not that long ago. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
Who knows what's coming, though? A few things to talk about. Let's start with politics first. Now, the New Zealand government hosts the Trans-Pacific Partnership Nations in Auckland coming up next week, February 4. Now, this is for the signing of the TPP.
Yes, that's right. So it'll be hosting all the TPP nations, and those include obviously Australia, United States, Japan, Singapore, etc. A lot of the South American economies. So they'll all be gathering here in Auckland to sign the TPP. Now, what it is that isn't ratifying it, doesn't bring it into force. It basically signs that the negotiated agreement that they're in on that. And so that will take place, next week on the 4th of February. Now, there's quite a lot of surprise around that. Actually, Evening Report broke that, courtesy of information that was sent to us from Professor Jane Kelsey, broke that issue that the signing was going to take place in New Zealand on that particular date. And the New Zealand government was being extremely coy on that and didn't actually confirm for a good week later. Okay. So there's all sorts of problems for the government on this. One, mainly, Peter, is that the New Zealand public just don't want a bar of it. There's polls throughout in the last 6 months have shown a growing tide of New Zealanders. The majority of New Zealanders polled are saying we don't want this TPP at all. And most of that is down to what is perceived by Kiwis as very little gain to come out for New Zealand out of signing up and ratifying this particular thing down the track. So things like, for example, our negotiators were talking up in the initial stages, and our politicians were talking up in the initial stages, that New Zealand would benefit hugely from having our milk powder exports in particular being able to be exported without hindrance or without tariff into the United States market and the Canadian markets. Now, that was resisted solidly by those countries and their negotiators. And New Zealand came back with its tail between its legs on milk powder exports and milk exports in general, dairy exports, etc. So that was seen as a big loss for New Zealand. And the other thing, of course, is New Zealand land, just like the issues in Australia, it's a finite commodity, isn't it, our land? Yeah. And New Zealand has been becoming more and more sensitive to very wealthy corporations and individuals buying up prime New Zealand land and locking it away in private ownership. That is an issue that the TPP negotiators, the New Zealand negotiators, failed on as well, and that they went in there where there was like $100 million cap, meaning that anything above the $100 million in sale sale price of a piece of land would have to get official approval through the various bodies and politicians. Meaning the minister responsible for that area. They came back with the cap actually blowing out over the top of $200 million. So it was seen as a double failure there. Yeah. So there's a lot of discontent around this, of which the government and John Key, the Prime Minister, have been trying to tidy up, Peter. Okay.
So could this, you've often spoken about, John Key almost can not put a foot wrong, even when he does make a, blunder, he seems to get away with it. Could this be one that is going to be a lot harder for him to get away with?
Well, it's probably one of those things that people start to actually look at the sanity of his rhetoric, and sanity is probably the wrong word, but what I'm getting at is the quality of his rhetoric and whether it actually matches the outcome and the impact of such things.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not so much an issue of a poll on John Key's longevity as a Prime Minister. He's certainly, well and truly ahead of anybody else in the rate making there. But what it does do is it places the country at odds with the government's direction, and that would be problematic over time, one would imagine. But it certainly gets back to February 4th, where there is huge protests that have been organised. We understand also that the government, on the government side of things, the government security things, there's been training going on to be certainly a lot more forthright in their defence of their activities on that particular day than we have seen since the Springbok Tour riots occurred back in 1981. So there's concerns there. There are also strange groups that are propping up that people in the activist community don't know anything about, that are claiming they're going to block roads and prevent any access and have a TPP-free zone around the area of Sky City where it's going to be signed on February 4th. So there's a lot of tension building, a lot of, seems like, misinformation, and a lot of strange kind of organisations that are popping their heads up, causing some in the left of New Zealand's activist movements to say, is this a false flag organisation that is popping up, and is the government actually using that to justify its training for its security measures? So there's a lot of buzz around this whole thing at the moment, particularly in Auckland.
What false flag? I'm not familiar with that term. So what does that mean?
It's when a security service, for example, might set up a phony kind of face that is presenting a problem, so that the government or itself can leverage some effect from it. Happens in most of the time in more authoritarian type of regimes overseas, but the indicators of the speculation is such that it shows the distrust that is going around this TPP. Remember that the information coming from, particularly in the New Zealand government, was zero, and really it was leaks coming from overseas economies that was fueling the informed debate in the country. So the government's got a real problem here. The people that are speaking out against it are not just from a left position, and not just an anti-trade position. They're actually coming from all across New Zealand society and interests. So it shows that there is definitely widespread opposition to this, and it's reasonably surprising that New Zealand's government is continuing on at this stage as really the poster child of such an agreement, and is really pushing to try and see the other countries to see it as the one that is the flag bearer for this TPP. So, February 4th, you could probably expect, Peter, one would imagine, some coverage back in Australia about what's happening here in New Zealand, and particularly with what's happening on the streets outside it.
So what's the process? So it's a ceremonial signing next week. So what happens after that? What's the protocol for it?
Yeah, for the TPP itself, going back to the various countries. Yeah, so the countries sign up to the agreement saying, yes, this is the best that we've considered we can negotiate on this, and let's take this document now back to our legislature for ratification. So it would arguably go before each government, each parliament's respective parties, and the majority view would say whether or not it's ratified or it's not. Now, the whole TPP agreement falls down, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement falls down if the large economies like the United States fail to actually get it ratified in their own legislature. So there's a huge body of opposition, and we understand it back in the United States around this, particularly in the Congress level, and from mainly the Democrats. And the United States people are saying that it certainly is not yet a done deal. Also in Japan, there is moves to the Japanese government's having a very hard time over there, and with the size of that economy and the access to that market, if that fell down too, well, then the GDP numbers combined and the agreement would fall below the threshold and the thing would go. That's as we understand it back here in New Zealand, people.
Okay. So that's next Thursday, isn't it, the 4th? So when that signing takes place there in Auckland.
Yes.
Well, watch that one, because obviously it has ramification for us as well.
Yes.
Indeed. All right, so have a quick break, then we'll come back. Got a few other things to talk about there, including a big announcement expected on public transport in Auckland today.
Yeah.
And some parallels to your public transport and ours too, which will be interesting to talk about. Be right back with you, Selwyn. Selwyn Manning with us. He's the editor of EveningReport.nz.
Leon Biner.
Just be very careful about your insurance and what you're being insured for. Get in writing what it is you asked, because they will play you. They will play you, and they work on the fact that you don't read your contract and maybe you don't know. Now, I'm not saying that all insurance companies are miserable. They're not. I noticed that one talks about we get you. Just be careful what that really means.
Leon Biner, weekday mornings from 9 on 1395, Adelaide's 5AA.
Hello, Frank Walker from National Tiles. National Tiles is winning more home builders than ever before. Yes, every day more and more registered home builders, large and small, are coming to National Tiles. Why? Because no other tile company in Australia is going to the lengths to satisfy large and small builders like National Tiles is. Things like $10,000 instant credit, guaranteed fixed pricing, premium range lifetime guarantees, rebates and much more. So if you're a registered builder, contact National Tiles now about your special requirements, whatever they are. I guarantee you that at National Tiles, we'll turn ourselves inside out to accommodate your needs. Go to nationaltiles.com.au now.
Are you a smoker or ex-smoker? Do you suffer from COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease? Are you using Seretide? If you answered yes to these questions, you may be eligible to participate in a research study to treat your symptoms. If you're aged 40 years or over and are interested in participating or would like more information, please call Lung Foundation Australia on 1800 818 545. That's 1-800-818-545.
Get frustrated with misplacing or losing your prescription glasses? How much easier would it be if you had another pair? At Health Partners Optical, there's no better time to choose a new pair of prescription glasses. Purchase by the end of February, mention this ad and save up to $130 with a free upgrade to Crizal UV lenses endorsed by Cancer Council. Visit Health Partners Optical, Perry Street, King William Road, Modbury and Woodcroft to enjoy crystal clear vision and maximum UV protection. Conditions apply.
Alex and Mia travel from Glenelg for plants from Garden Grove. Wade came from Harndorf for lawn, and Gemma from Gawler got her pavers from Garden Grove, one of Adelaide's biggest garden centres, with one of Adelaide's biggest ranges. No wonder people travel miles to visit. With a playground to keep the kids entertained and cafe to unwind in. Garden Grove, Golden Grove Road, Golden Grove. 7-day delivery to your area.
Garden Grove, the garden that I want.
Pain Away is for the temporary relief of mild arthritic pain, muscle and joint inflammation and muscular aches and pains, and is now available in an easy-to-use roll-on.
Pain Away Pain Relief Roll-On Lotion is available in all leading pharmacies.
It's pain relief for when you're on the go.
Use only as directed.
Looking for residential aged care for your loved one? The elegantly restored Trevu House Residential Aged Care at Gawler is now open. Located at the gateway to the Barossa, Trevu House provides 68 places across a range of single and companion rooms and suites, all beautifully appointed with a private ensuite. Trevu House delivers the highest standard of dedicated care and personalised service with 24-hour registered nursing care. Call Trevu House today on 8522 1045 or Google Trevu House Aged Care.
Peter Godfrey on 1395, Adelaide's 5AA.
It is 19 past 5 now. Selwyn Manning with us, editor of EveningReport.nz. Selwyn, just as an aside, I saw last night there's a fairly hefty lotto prize still unclaimed in New Zealand at the moment from last week. Your Powerball, $6.8 million that hasn't been claimed yet. It's not yours.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard that. It may be the same one that one person reckons the ticket went through the washing machine.
Oh, could have been that one. Oh, yeah, I saw that. I didn't put the two together.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, dear.
Maybe there are two separate ones running there. But
it'd be heartbreaking.
Yes. Not quite as big as the big one in the United States a week or so back.
No, but still I'd be happy with a tidy $6.8 million. Do me for a while.
Moan.
No, that's for sure. Now, last week I had a call from Alan, who from Auckland, but I think he said he came out here for a couple of years and stayed for many years. But he mentioned
1976, I understand.
Yeah. But he mentioned about trams in Auckland and said that at one time there was a tram line that sort of went basically sort of one coast to the other. And I think he mentioned, it was claimed to be the longest tram line in the world or some such thing. Do you know much? Was that the case? Was it?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking back to when I was a little child in the 60s and when we'd track ourselves into Auckland City. It was trolley buses at that stage. So I had a quick look up for you in Alan, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, it was Alan, that's right.
Listener. And by 1964 was the date the last tram service closed in New Zealand, and that was in Wellington. So the understanding here, by the look of it, is in the late 50s, early 60s, the trams were all gone from Auckland, replaced with trolley buses at that stage, and buses. No, certainly the trolley buses were going right through the 60s and into the very early 70s. Yeah. But what's happened in recent times, which is probably of interest to Alan here, is that one of the original trams, there's a tram line running at MOTAT around Western Springs. And MOTAT is the Museum of Transport and Technology, is the full name spanned out. Yeah. And that kicked into gear around 2006, and also down at the waterfront, the Auckland waterfront, where it would have changed significantly since he was here. It's all eateries and entertainment areas at the Wynyard Quarter. Now there's around in 2011 August it was, it officially opened with a tram line going all around there, and those are heritage sites, heritage lines is what they're describing them as, Peter. So there is a want to have these coming back, but certainly we and Christchurch is down in the South Island rebuilt a tram line that was a City Link tram line after the Christchurch earthquakes, and that reopened in November 2013. So I guess a little bit like the discussions in Adelaide, that certainly in New Zealand, we're looking back and seeing the merits of some of these services that were around, and also the nostalgic value is an attractive proposition.
Yeah, well. absolutely. Yeah.
And the other thing I think Alan was questioning was whether or not, I made a mention that the Waitemata and Manukau harbours at a couple of points was only less than a kilometre apart, and it certainly is the case. There's the portage crossing, which was used by ancient Maori who would pull their canoes across from the Waitemata harbour across to the Manukau and vice versa, and that's actually less. That's down around the Otahu area between the Panmure inlets and specifically where the freezing works used to be on the Manukau harbour around Penrose. So that's the narrowest part, and the other part is the inner harbour of the inner Waitemata harbour between Te Atatu and Green Bay of the Manukau harbour, and that's only a matter of a couple of kilometres across at that point. Okay. So there's a little bit of history. He was obviously thinking back and thinking, what's the story there?
What's going on there? Yeah, well, there you go, Alan. I hope you're listening this morning. That explains all that. But on a public transport front, you're expecting an announcement today on government funding for a central rail link in the CBD of Auckland.
Yes, and of course that certainly that announcement has been made already, and it just came through late yesterday, and the Minister for Economic Development, Stephen Joyce, was on national radio here on Radio New Zealand only a matter of minutes before we came on air, Peter, and he was talking about that decision. The government is trumping up around 50% of the costs for the City Rail Link, or the CRL as it's referred to here. And what it does basically is, at the moment, the trains come into Auckland in an underground area to the Britomart station where the old post office used to be, at the bottom of Queen Street there. And then they have to back out down the line and then go on the Western Line or the Southern Line or the Eastern Line back out where they came. And so the City Rail Link that goes under the city with stations popping up just like in modern cities around the world, and links around so that there's a flow through. So there's a lot of common sense about this. Now, earlier on, Peter, the government, back in 2012, for example, and 2013, it assessed Auckland Council's want in this area in the Mayor Len Brown's campaign in this particular area, and says, well, there isn't really a business case for this particular city rail link, and it was reluctant to commit itself at that stage. So what has happened over time is the patronage of using the trains. The public are using more trains, wanting more public transport. Auckland is notorious for having poor public transport, despite decades of trying to address that very issue. And the government, the Prime Minister announced yesterday specifically that they would come through with about $2.5 million, as I understand, and that would kick work off pretty soon, with an expectation of bringing that conclusion of that, a guaranteed completion according to the current mayor, in 2022, which he says is excellent news. No, that would imagine a lot of Aucklanders would agree with him.
Indeed. Hey, before we run out of time, we've got to talk a bit about cricket, because the Australian Cricket Tour of New Zealand's coming up. But before we do that, actually, Jeff has called in, and he wanted to have a chat to you about cricket, actually. So, Jeff, good morning.
Yeah, good morning, fellas. Are you a cricket follower over the ditch there?
Yeah, kind of. I wouldn't say I'm an expert, but we certainly enjoy the cricket.
Okay. I've followed cricket and played since 1960 at a senior level. I've only ever seen it happen once. Your captain retiring now, Macmillan, it must have been a one-day game several years ago. Well, it might have been anything up to 6 or 8 years ago. Sean Tate, who was still bowling for Australia, came in, let one rip at 150 plus K. I don't know if you talk K or miles an hour over there.
K, kilometres, yeah.
Okay. It was a full-blooded fast ball. Unfortunately for him, it was exactly in the right place. And Macmillan, who was the keeper at the time and batsman, he dived onto the pitch. And as the ball went past, he just gave it a light tap in the air. Can you remember it?
I don't remember that part. I don't remember that particular shot or anything. But
it was a six. About it. It was a six, straight back over the keeper. It was a small ground. I can't remember where, whether it was Auckland or over the other side in the South Island.
The tighter boundaries over here, of course. And some would say that he must have had his eye on that one.
He just rolled and tapped, and it landed about 20 or 30 metres over the fence. It was a six, perfectly straight back. Poor old Tatey, he just stopped and looked, because he'd never had it happen before.
I wish some of our other batsmen could replicate the same kind of style. At the moment, they're going quite well. However, they're facing Pakistan at the moment. They played on Monday, on the 25th of January, of course, and New Zealand won by 70 runs in that one-day international. And they play Pakistan again today. And of course, there's the Australian tour coming up, which should be a really good one. That opens up on the 31st of January. On the 3rd of February. And that's a one-day international at Eden Park, and it's always good to see the Trans-Tasman rivalry really firing at Eden Park, in whatever code it is. So that'll be a great game. I understand it's sold out, and then the Australians play 3 one-day internationals there for a decider that ends up at Seddon Park in Hamilton, which is a lovely ground, and then 2 test matches before the Indian 2020 comes in later in March. So
you are a New Zealander. You are a New Zealander. I heard you say a sucks. He definitely hit a sucks.
There you go.
Thanks, Jeff. See you, mate. Bye-bye. Bye. They'll always pick you up on the pronunciation of the word six, won't they, Selwyn?
They will. They certainly will.
Yeah. So, all looking... So sold out already for the
yes, I understand it, and certainly, New Zealand has had a good summer since we lost our games to you guys in the early summer season, Peter, and I guess that kind of the team and the public are starting to think, well, let's have a good look at seeing how good the New Zealand team is now after it's had, a pretty good run out, pretty good run against Sri Lanka, of course, Pakistan, most recently just here now, and certainly in the one-day games we're competitive against Pakistan. So, let's see how we go with you guys.
All right, may the best team win, as we keep saying.
February 3rd, so next week, that kicks off Eden Park, big game.
Big game. All right, we can talk about that next week. All right, Selwyn, thanks for your time this morning. You have a great week, and we'll catch you next week.
You take care, Peter.
All the best. Bye-bye. Selwyn Manning, editor of EveningReport.nz, New Zealand's independent interactive debate. It's 5:30. News time with Marcus.